Namaste and welcome to part 2 of this module on free will. We have seen the historical perspective of free will. Now, in this part, we will discuss the perspective of modern world and the analysis of the concept of free will, which is useful to get the answer of the questions regarding significance of morality in human life. Immanuel Kant, who talks about ethics, morality, humanity and also immortality of the soul, has given very systematic and organized views on free will and ethics. Kant thinks that human being is a rational being. He says that ethical theory requires belief in free will. We all should respect humanity and we all have to behave in accordance with the rules which can hold for everyone. Kant also argued that moral law is a truth of reason, hence all rational creatures are bound by the same moral law. So, what one should do? And the answer is one should act rationally in accordance with a universal moral law. Kant's famous remarks are, a free will and a will under moral law is one and the same. Now, what humanistic psychologists say? They give a rational and logical view to look at free will. Humanistic psychologists such as Maslow or Rogers, whose theory are mostly followed even today, they say that freedom is not only possible but also necessary if we really want to become fully functional human beings. Self-actualization need is recognized by both the psychologists, which make human beings unique. Hence, the person should be free to commit sins or act morally. From Indian perspective, theory of karma says the similar thing. Everyone is responsible for his or her behavior and he or she has to bear the consequences of that behavior in future. Now, let us look at analysis of this free will and various aspects and definitions of free will. The discussion about meaning and beliefs about free will shows diversity of thoughts and necessity of distinction or definition of man's free activity. Few scholars have tried to analyze these thoughts on the basis of terms used to define and describe free will. The first concept is voluntary act. The free will, as we now know, means free choice or free decisions taken by human beings, but every voluntary act is not by definition a free act which is preceded by the act of deliberation. So, we have to understand what voluntary is all about. The description of the term voluntary means that the act is one time or another time willed freely. It does not mean that if that act is performed regularly, then it is a voluntary act. If it is a habit, then first time or one time that was definitely willed freely. Hence, once they are established as habits, then those acts are no free acts. For example, if a person is doing morning walk, then the first time when the person has chosen to walk, that act is a free act. But if the person is doing morning walk regularly, then it is a habit. The second concept is deliberation. If not every act of man performed is voluntary, then the actions performed by man are to be differentiated. One type is human actions and the other is actions of human beings. Human acts are acts of deliberations, but acts of human beings, that is actions of human beings, are not necessarily of deliberation. A reflex action is an act of human being, but it would not be act of deliberation. But kindness or any cruel act can be actions of deliberation. So, which are actions of humans. Now, these distinctions give birth to various terms. Voluntary acts or deliberation lead to goodness or badness of the act. Hence, few more terms need some clarification. So, the third term or the concept is freedom exercise. To exercise is to make some applications of anything or implementation of anything. So, freedom of exercise is freedom of adoption or rejection of a particular thing by its good or bad implications. Now, what is freedom of specifications? It is a freedom to choose between one particular good or another, when several goods mean good implications of acts are available. For example, when a person sets a goal for himself or herself, he or she finds one particular good for him or her, that is freedom of specifications. Now, what are commanded acts? This concept is based on the choice of the person. So, these acts are those acts which are chosen by the will, but these acts are influenced by some other powerful things also. When a person sets a goal for him, his abilities, interest matter as well as his wish. Now, what are elicited acts? These acts are the acts which take place within will or desires. So, when an athlete or a swimmer decides to win Olympic medal, then he does whatever is required for that. Hence, the person's desire is an elicited act. Now, what is license? It is an ability to choose an object that is satisfying, but not necessarily perfect in its nature. The ability or choice to consume junk food or read any exciting book is called license. Freedom is opposite to license, but it is the capacity of a person to pursue goods that can fulfill his nature. Now, indifference, it is either neutrality of the will to act or not to act in a particular situation, or neutrality of the will as an object. For example, when a person understands the dual aspect of subject and select one standpoint because of some desirable attributes of that subject. Spontaneity, it is something arising within a thing from its internal principles. For example, life of a plant is spontaneous, but they are not free. They move, they grow out of internal necessity. Now, there are other elements also which contribute or influence on free will. Most of the thinkers believe that the most important of the powers of soul that influence choices of will is the intellect. The person's choice of an object is partly guided by his intellect. The will can also be affected indirectly by various objects of sense powers. Sense and physical state of a person can influence intellectual deliberation and choice. Now, here physical setup means inherited physical makeup such as height, fairness, body posture, or few limitations due to illnesses or anomalies or pathological conditions. Now, free will and unconscious influences. We all are aware of three levels of human mind, that is conscious, subconscious and unconscious mind. So, there can be things associated with our subconsciousness or unconsciousness. The act of free choice is made up on the basis of conscious judgments. Hence, we can say that there can be illusory beliefs that can affect these conscious judgments, and so no such judgments have 100% truth value. Now, what is about mental illness? Psychologists and scholars are aware of some irresistible impulse of mind. For example, an obsessive compulsive disorder, the person does certain acts out of obsessive compulsive reaction pattern. Now, it is not a free act. When a person is fearful or anxious, his actions are influenced by such unregistered impulses. Hence, such occasions are needed to be considered which determining the morality of the act. Freedom of choice is also denied in cases of psychotic or personality disorders, as they sometimes do not possess true knowledge because they may hallucinate in certain state of mind. To conclude this module, we can say that free will is an essential concept for human beings. If there is a freedom, then and then only we can hold human beings responsible for their behavior. Based on this discussion, can you find few keywords important to describe free will? Take paper and pen, think for a while and write down your answers.